First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. It's Gary Vilhauer. I'm the stewardship chair this year, or continuing this year, for District 5160 and also district governor nominee. I'd like to introduce Candy Pierce, past district governor, who's also on the line.
Good afternoon, everyone.
We'll be trading off today a little bit more than we did in the first session. Let me turn it over to Candy at this point. Start our presentation.
All right, sounds good. So are you on slide number 2?
Yes.
Oh, there we go. Okay, so this session, as we told you the other day, is talking more specifically about district grants rather than we talked about global grants at the last session. This one is more about district grants. But some of the same things apply regardless of if you're doing a global grant or a district grant. So we're going to cover again how to manage the grants, what the stewardship expectations are, because there are expectations every time that we have. So we're going to learn stewardship expectations. We're going to help you to learn about the MOU, and we'll do most of that at the assemblies, but we will want to talk about pieces that you're going to have in the MOU or Memorandum of Understanding. And you're here because we want to qualify your clubs to receive the grants. And then we're going to talk specifically about the policies of our district as it comes to the district designated funds and as it pertains to the grants that we have lined up. So while there are specific policies that the Rotary Foundation has, our district also has policies that we want to adhere to. Again, we're going to talk specifically about your financial piece of it, and that's really one of the more important pieces going forward as far as follow-up and really good management of your grant will be your financial controls that you put in place. So we talk about that at the global grant. We're going to talk about it a little bit more today, and specifically when it comes to district grants. And we want to make sure that you really have a good grasp of what kind of financial controls you should have in place, what kind of technical standards you should have. And we've talked a lot about, we want to make sure that the grants that we're doing meet the needs of our beneficiaries. So rather than doing what we want to do, we're going to do what they want to do or what their needs are. And then you want to make sure that your good grants and good projects fulfill the objectives of your grant proposal. So when you apply for a grant, you're going to say what your objectives are for that grant, and you need to monitor all through if you're going to meet that or not. And because we are using donor dollars, we want to make sure that we are taking proper control of that money and safeguarding the funds to be spent the way that we say they're going to be spent, and not out of compliance with Rotary's standards, with our district standards, and with nonprofit standards in general. When we talk specifically about, meeting your community need, and we talk about why you want to do that, one of the keys to that is we want sustainable projects that are going to carry on long after the Rotarians are gone. And if the beneficiaries are in on it from the beginning and understand what it is that you are doing because you've asked them and they've said, here's what we need, and you're coming in to fill that in, they're much more likely to support it and participate. So you get more hands to also help, which is a great part. So that's a big part of sustainability of a project. Keep that in mind when you're doing your research and when you're looking for your projects for your grants. The more partners you involve, the better off you're going to be, long as you know that they're partners you can work with and manage. So have your plans in place that if you are working with partners, that if they have a specific piece or a specific job or a specific contribution that they're making, that you can manage that really quickly and that you have a checklist. So on your implementation plan, a lot of what you're going to be doing when you're involving partners is having a really good plan of who's doing what, and really easy to check off when you're doing that. And then again, it is very, very, very important that you understand that the funds need to be managed properly, and provide good stewardship for the donor dollar. So the needs assessment for district grants is, basically the same as we talked about it with the global grants. So you have to know what the communities need, the community you want to work in, whether it's a local community or an international community, wherever you're working, you need to understand what their needs are, and then just determine the resources that you have in order to fulfill those needs. And so if you're looking at a project with, in a medical project of some sort? Do you have some medical experts in your club or within your community partners that can help you meet that piece of it? And the more of those you have, the easier it's going to be. And so talking to your community, talking to the folks that you're going to serve is the best way to make that happen. So if you haven't already done a district grant and are looking to do one and wondering how to do a community assessment need, one of the things you might want to do is talk to somebody else, another club that has already done a district grant, and see what they've done with their needs assessment. But also use your members of your club who work in the community and know, especially if you have a lot of nonprofit folks that work with the disadvantaged communities, they may have a lot of resources for you to talk to and to talk to those folks. So those are a couple of ideas of things that you can do to talk to your community to make sure that you're doing the grants in a way that works best for your community that you're serving and for your club. So again, when you're planning your project, district grants, it's the same as global grants in that you want to have a committee of 3 people. They should have very specific roles as to what they do and what they're managing, and one person may be specifically in charge of your plan, but you should all be involved in the plan, or the 3-person committee should all be involved in the plan. You can have more involved in putting the plan together, but then the plan is going to live with that committee, and the budget will be established, and that budget is going to live with that committee. So it may be that when you have a 3-person committee, one person's role is the plan, one of them is the budget, and one of them is the financial management piece, which is not necessarily the budget, but rather the documentation and the following up on that. So assign the roles as they work really well for the 3 people on the committee. And if you know that you need to have these things, you need to have someone to manage your plans, you know you need someone to work with your budget, you need to have someone to work with your reporting, you may pick the people on your committee that fit those roles, or that have expertise, or that are really strong in those areas. And you also may want to pick, and of course you want people that are passionate for the program or the project, because that will help you get people to do the buy-in. So there, as you see on this slide, it's plan, plan, and plan again, and have plans for everything. So you want to make sure that you have a written plan for managing your finances, that you really have, a bunch of what ifs and a plan that if that happens, here we're going to fix it by doing this, and then have a plan for reporting it and for keeping your documents in place. Okay. So the budget, when you're preparing your budget, again, same as global grants, there's a lot of things that go into creating this budget, but make sure you cover these 4 things specifically. Don't try to nickel and dime yourself so that it looks like a really cost-effective budget. If you can't deliver on that, it should be realistic, and it should cover all the costs that you need to make the project successful. And get competitive bidding. If you need a piece of equipment, don't just go to your closest source and just take their price, but do get some competitive bidding. Make sure that, of course, the price, and that helps you to make sure you have reasonable prices on all of that. And then this is where conflicts of interest can come up really well, or really more than almost any other place, is if you do buy from a Rotarian, or if a Rotarian is involved in helping, you need to disclose any conflicts of interest so that we know when they're looking at the grant proposal that who's involved, and make sure that we're not, again, misspending the donor dollar, that we're stewarding the money in a way that is appropriate and best for the project. And so if the Rotarian business has the best price, all you got to do is say they have the best price, but it's also owned by a Rotarian or managed by a Rotarian or something like that, so that everyone is aware and there's a lot of transparency on what's happening. So all of that stuff is applied to the global grants. It also is applying to district grants. And now we're going to go specifically into applying for a district grant. And Gary, I'm turning it over to you for that one.
Okay, thank you very much, Candy. Right there, applying for district grants. Okay, first thing I wanted to go over was the actual dollar amounts you can apply for and the requirements. And I'll say it several times today probably, but all these requirements are in the district policy that's on the district website, or it's also available to you today as a handout that you can download. So for one club applying for a district grant, you can apply for $10,000. If you have another club supporting you, even just financially, but preferably doing some of the work and hands-on to get Rotarian participation, you get another $5,000 for each club, or for another club, up to $15,000 total. For each dollar you're requesting in DDF, you have to provide 50 cents on the dollar. So if you're asking for $5,000, you have to bring in other money of $2,500. So, and that doesn't mean that's club funds. It can be a combination of club funds and outside donors. You can have a fundraiser for it. There are a number of different ways to get outside funds to contribute to your grant request. A couple of things that we've established last couple of years to try to be fair to all the clubs is the first is for when you're asking for a district grant, priority, as long as everything else is correct on the grants, priority is going to be given to a club that hasn't received a district grant in the prior year. So we're trying to balance out clubs that get it, and it doesn't mean if you participated, if your club was a secondary club on another district grant last year, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking the primary club in the application. So if your club hasn't gotten a district grant directly in the last several years, you'll get a priority. This next statement came about this year that we wanted to let clubs know that we would give a priority, everything else being equal, to local community projects. But if a club had an international project that didn't fit the global grant criteria, a smaller exploratory grant, that we would consider those. So again, we're trying to balance things out and get it as many clubs involved as we can. Application process itself is in two parts for the 16-17 year. The first is a required pre-submittal where you'll take your district grant application, put it together, and submit it sometime between May 1st and May 27th. The reason we're doing this is we found over the first couple of years of doing this that we got grants in the final review that didn't meet some of the requirements for having a grant, and we had to deny them on there because they either didn't meet the terms and conditions for grants from the Rotary Foundation, or they didn't meet some other district requirement. So if you go through this pre-review, it sounds like an extra step, but it's really in the club's benefit because the the grants review panel will review it and make suggestions so that you can improve your grant and improve your chances of getting a grant during that. So, and you have to go through this process because what we're trying to do is during the final review, we want to make sure we're reviewing all grants as an equal footing and give everybody a fair chance of doing it. The pre-review you can submit after they've been pre-reviewed between June 1st and June 30th. And then the grants review panel will review them in July and will give you some answers back as soon as possible.
And Gary, I was just going to add that, you know, if during the pre-submittal the pre-submittal area time during May, that they can, if everything's fine and in line, there's nothing more you have to do. It's just that if you're if you're missing something, it is a great opportunity so that just to, as you said, keep them on the equal footing with everyone else.
Correct. And I had a couple of quick questions. Whether an Interact club would count as an additional club. Yes, it would. However, additional Rotary clubs is what we're really after, but we are encouraging you to work with Interact and Rotaract clubs to do grants, so they do count. The question was about how do you find out what other clubs have done in the past. On the district website, under the Foundation Grants tab, there is a listing of all the district grants that have been issued in the amounts and to which clubs, and a brief title going back to, I believe, 2008. So if you're interested in what clubs have done, you can look at that and get a brief overview, and then you can contact that club for more information about how they did it. Okay, the actual district grant form is available again on the district website, and I know the title says 2015-16, but we're going to use it again in 16 and 17, and we just haven't changed the title. Anyway, it's very important that you read all the information on the application and answer the questions. As you'll see in a minute on the criteria, that's one of the first things that we look at in the pre-submittal is, have you answered all the questions and are they accurate? We don't need elaborate, long presentations. That's why the first statement in yellow there asks for brief statements, but you need to give us enough information so we know what you want to do, so the Grant Review Committee can review the grants on equal footing with all the other applications and choose the ones to fund. And let's back up just a minute. I keep referring to the Grants Review Committee. We've got a panel of 10 Rotarians from around the district who review all these grant applications and then recommend approvals and comments and ask for more information, both on the global grant side and district grant side. So in the evaluation criteria of what the review panel is going to look at first, there's 5 major things. I believe it's 5. Does the grant, or does the applicant agree to the terms and conditions of Rotary Foundation grants? That's one of the downloads or handouts on here. It's also on the district website, and it's also on RI's website. There are details in there that occasionally clubs overlook, and that's what we pick up in that pre-submittal for district grants. We'll talk about qualification more, but your club has to meet all the qualification requirements that are in the district policy. One of those is attending this grant management seminar, which this year is 2 webinars and a breakout. Have there been potential conflicts of interest noted? And we need to, you'll hear that conflict of interest a lot through this seminar, but it's a major thing, and Rotary's very concerned that even the appearance of a conflict of interest is not good, and so we try to avoid those as much as possible. Has the applicant certified that they've read the Guide to Global Grants, which we talked about last week and which was mailed to you? A lot of the information in the Global Grant Guide applies to district grants, so you need to read that because it talks about how to manage projects and how to develop them. Many of the things Candy went over earlier on the needs assessment and those types of things. And then we asked for approval from the club president and president-elect of the lead club or the primary club in the grant. And that's because when the questions come up about the grants or we don't get reports and that thing, we go back to the club president and find out what's going on because it's a club project and they're the leader of their club. And so those 5 questions are the first things we look at, and any of those that aren't done or unsigned or anything, they'll get kicked back to you in that pre-submittal and say, please sign these or do this. Then during the final review period, we're going to really concentrate on, do we have enough information to make a good decision on the application form? We don't go out and ask questions afterwards. We review all the grant requests at the same time, so we need all the information on the application form. And then we try to evaluate from what you've told us how much meaningful benefit the project's going to bring to the community. And at the same time, the feasibility that you're going to be able to do what you want with the project. If you're talking about a multi-million-dollar project and you're asking for a $15,000 district grant for it, we're going to need some pretty good information that you've got the backup and other financing and other plans in place to make it a real project. We are also going to look at the sustainability of the project, and we went over that last time with global grants, but we want to, in this district, make a difference in communities that is lasting. And so we want to see the ongoing commitments and how a project is going to benefit the beneficiaries or the community in the long term. Another one we're going to look at is, the visibility, and we're not talking about signage here, but how you're planning on promoting the grant and involving the community so that they know Rotary has helped them. And then we'll look at community support from non-Rotary people, either community groups or other foundations or just other service clubs, whoever is going to do it. And then your funding source, how reliable is that? Have you worked it out? It's all right to tell us you're going to hold a fundraiser or you're going to do certain things to raise the funds. That's fine. But we want to know, you again, as Candy mentioned, that you've got a plan for executing this grant and project that's going to make it successful. And then as just a tie between the annual giving fund and how much money the district receives back in district designated funds, we want to know your per capita giving to the annual fund over the last 3 years. And per capita giving is how much, on average, each person in your club gave to the Rotary Foundation Annual Giving Fund.
Gary, I'd just like to also interject on the first bullet, the community support bullet. That can also include, other than just service clubs and maybe some of your partners, it can also include the folks that are the beneficiaries. So if you have a work group from the beneficiaries that, you're putting something together and 30 of them show up, you're in a neighborhood and you're doing a neighborhood project and 30 people from the neighborhood show up, that would or have committed to showing up to your project or to, giving a couple hours of their time, that also counts as far as community support as well.
Thank you, Candy. That's a really good point, because we want the community where the grant is going to be operating to get the benefit, but also to buy into supporting it in the future, and that's one of the sustainability items. So now implementing a grant, and I think we're going to switch back to Candy at this point, right?
Okay, so for the implementation plan, you notice we keep going back to financial management, but also the communication is really crucial to successful implementation of your project, but also as it continues on and closes. So the partners and community members, they need to be aware of the progress of what's going on and how the grant is being used and all of that stuff. But also your club's going to have to report to the district, and the district's going to have to report to the Rotary Foundation on how the funds are being spent, and on how on the progress. And so the better you are at communicating on a regular basis as to what's going on and where you are, the better off you're going to be when it comes to closing it out and all of your follow-up. Don't forget when on your financial management plan that your grant funds need to be specifically designated as the funds specifically for that grant. They can't be commingled with other grants or with other things like that. And if necessary, you have to have a backup plan in place to transfer the custody of the funds if something negative should happen. So you should have a plan for that. You should also have your plan for dispersing funds, and also if you need to know what any local laws or requirements are when it comes to these funding of any grants or details. So whether it's a local community or if you apply to do something internationally, make sure that you know what the laws are and any requirements that are engaged with that as well. You need to have detailed records so that it'll really help simplify your reporting on the usage of your grant funds, and also make sure there's lots of transparency in everything that you do. And as long as you continue to keep reports, then anytime somebody makes an inquiry as to where you are, how you've spent all of that, you can pull it up right away without having to go back and do a lot of research on that. And that's going to make your lives a whole lot easier, so that you can sleep at night not worrying about the big people from the district coming down to find out what you did with the grant funds. That was tongue-in-cheek, but seriously, we want to make sure that you have a plan in place, you're following the plan, and that at any time we can ask and you'll know where you are in your plan. And if something is deviating from your original scope or your original budget, it will definitely require the district's approval and maybe the Rotary Foundation's approval. And so make sure that if something, because stuff happens, we know that, but if something happens and you're going to have to change your focus, you're going to have to change one of your implementation plan, make sure that you work with the folks at the district grant committee to let them know and follow through on that. So.
Yeah, Candy, just let me pop in here. As being stewardship chair, I get involved with all the final reports and the reviews and the auditing or the reviews by our audit committee. So having the records, and we had a question about separate bank accounts, that you definitely need a separate bank account. It needs to be just for this grant. So if you've got multiple district grants, you need a bank account for each one, so that we can tell, oh, we've had a few clubs that have ignored this, and they find out when they do their final reports, it's a lot more work to try to track the money. And all that we're trying to do with the final reports is to track where the money's gone to make sure that everybody's done the correct things with it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Gary. It's nice to hear from somebody who's actually been there on the on the front lines working on that, because you know what you've seen.
Yes.
Okay, so let's move to the next slide.
Let me, while you're doing that, looks like you hit the wrong key there, but we've got a quick question on time frame for the grant funds. District grants, since that's what we're talking about, are 2 years long. They're smaller, quicker grants than global grants in most cases. And so you get the funds usually will come out within a couple of months of the review, but once you receive the funds, you've got 2 years from that point to complete the grant. And so we'll ask for reports with either within 2 months of when you complete the grant, or at the 1 year period you give us a progress report, and then when the grant's finished, you give us a final report. If you can't spend the money and complete your project at that point within that 2 years, if you're close, we can probably work with you. But if you still have the money in the bank and haven't done anything, unfortunately, we're probably going to have to ask for that money back so we can give it out again to Rotarians and do more projects. Candy?
Okay, so thank you for that. And so I've already moved the slide to the conflict of interest, and
Right.
it's another one of those recurring themes that you've probably noticed. We have, stewardship, financial oversight, financial planning, financial this, and also conflict of interest. And because of our practice as Rotarians, as doing business with other Rotarians, that's why this comes up a lot, because a conflict of interest exists when a Rotarian benefits financially or personally from a grant. And you might ask, well, how would somebody benefit personally? And that would be, let's say you decided to hire a project manager on a project and you hired a Rotarian. That could be a personal benefit to them as well. So, or someone might get publicity for their business or improve social standing in some areas, a promotion at work. They get a promotion at work if they get this project for their company. So there are all kinds of things that could exist, and so we just want to make sure that we're as clear and as transparent as possible, and that if we use a Rotarian's business, if we use a product supplied by a Rotarian-owned or managed company, that we have the documentation to back it up to say, hey, this was the best price, it has the best equipment, it's fair to everybody, but that and that you have disclosed it completely, because anytime you don't disclose it, that's when trouble starts. So because we have personal integrity, because we have a four-way test, addressing and preventing conflicts of interest help us to maintain that. So just make sure that you disclose direct or indirect association with the grant project. So that can include a Rotarian or an associate of a Rotarian, or a spouse or child or cousin of a Rotarian, anybody that could be perceived as being on the inside. That should all be disclosed, and it should be very transparent and very clear. And I hope you get how important it is that we want to avoid any potential conflicts of interest as we go forward.
Let me pop in here one more thing.
Yeah.
I know we're beating conflict of interest to death, but it shows up in 2 or 3 different grants every year, either global or district. And one of the ones that's hard for some people to understand is, if you are on the board of directors or a paid employee of a nonprofit and you want to do a district grant or a global grant to work with that nonprofit, that's fine and that's great, but that Rotarian cannot be on the grant committee, cannot be a primary sponsor of that grant, because that's a direct conflict of interest. You're getting money for that association that you're either on the board of directors of or getting a paycheck from. So keep that in mind.
And I would take it a step further and just make sure that it's more than they're just not on the committee, but that that they sort of recuse themselves from even discussions about it, other than expertise or to give information. But if they should recuse themselves from anything that could look and or seem as if they are putting undue influence on the grant or the spending of the grant or anything like that.
Correct.
Okay. So I think we've done our best to talk about conflicts of interest. I hope you guys get that. And finally, so evaluation. So evaluating everything helps you determine if you were successful or not, and also to help us to learn lessons for the future. So when you look at your project as it's going forward, we've told you to have plans in place. So you have an implementation plan. You've got steps all along the way. You've got a financial plan, and you've got all of those things in place. And so your evaluation on all of that helps you work through the process. It helps you with your reporting. Your reporting is much easier to do if you are evaluating all the way along the process. So don't just wait till the very end to evaluate, but to at the halfway point you should kind of know where you are, and if you're where you could have done better, and also where you may have guessed incorrectly and had to do more in the beginning, or will have to do more at the end because of that. Because it not only helps you, but it also helps folks coming behind you. And one of the favorite sayings of a lot of folks in Rotary is, don't strain your eyes, plagiarize. Well, that also happens with grants and with grant projects. So, we try to help others by letting them know what lessons we've learned and how we could have done something better or more effectively or more efficiently. And so as you're evaluating, you want to look at that, but it also, and so that we know where the successes are and where our challenges are and how we can learn to do it better. And the evaluation part also is when you're promoting your project and to your club and to the public, it also helps others get involved. And it lets, if you have donor partners, it lets them know how their funds are doing, and that you are a good steward of their donated dollar as well. So it doesn't hurt to, if you have especially financial partners, whether they're other Rotary clubs or whether they're community partners that are giving money, or even individual donors, it doesn't hurt to give them progress reports. Hey, we're here, here's where we are, and oh, this went really well, and oh, we could, and we looked at this, and next time we're going to do this better. That makes donors look at you as really being observant of your dollars and really involved in making sure that they're included in the loop, and that is a benefit to everyone. And it really makes donors want to again be involved with you again, because they see that you have the transparency, that everything's going, and oh, oops, we did this, but here's how we fixed it, is also a good learning experience for everyone. And so evaluation is critical to making a good project, and to knowing, if you don't know where you're going, your chances are you end up someplace else. Well, it also lets you know whether you got there or not. And so having that evaluation process is another critical thing to do going forward. And with that, do we have questions?
We don't, but I have a few follow-up things here just before we wrap this up.
Okay.
First of all, I want to make it clear, I was going to do a poll, but I think I'll just make it clear that to get credit for the whole grant management seminar, the 2 webinars, you have to go to the breakout at one of the assemblies. So it's a 3-part series. So make sure you're going to attend either on the April 30th in Red Bluff or the May 14th in Benicia to do that. We are in that final breakout session. We're going to have about 40 minutes to go over reporting and a bunch of other important stuff that we haven't do it, and answer your questions. So it would help us a lot if you send me ongoing questions that you have, so that we can be prepared and work them into the presentation there, as well as get new information. The other thing is...
And of course,
go ahead.
Ongoing MOU. I was just going to say, and don't forget the lovely MOU.
Yeah, there are other things, and that's part of what we're going to go over next time, is there are other things required for club qualification besides the president-elect and one other person attending the grant management seminars. So we're going to go over that in detail next time. You can apply for district grants before you're actually qualified, but no club will get funding on a district grant until they're fully qualified. So make sure you go through the district policy, see what those requirements are, and then we'll discuss any questions next week or a couple weeks or whenever we go. The other thing we're going to do after the end of the breakouts is we're probably going to send you a short test because we've had a number of people that have missed one or the other online webinars, and so we just want to make sure everybody understands the requirements. It'll be easy and not very time consuming to do. The other thing we'll be sending you after the May 14th assembly is a survey to get your reaction, your comments on this format and the grant management so that we can continue improving them for next year. And we do encourage everybody to attend these who wants to get involved in grants, and also especially the president nominees or anybody that wants to get this requirement out of the way early. So let me go through a couple last questions, and then we're, okay, that's why we're developing a test for people. The other question that I've got here, how long does qualification last? Qualification is only for 1 year. So each year, clubs, when they want to apply for grants during that year, have to be qualified. So all the requirements have to be met, including training each year. And how do I track attendance? If you haven't run a webinar before, they're an interesting thing. I can tell who's got their screen on and who's got it off. I can tell who's attended, basically, and then we'll take a actual sign-up sheet at the breakouts. Go ahead.
And then the last part would be at the test. So in order to be completely qualified, you will have to take the test that Gary was referring to and send it back in order to check off that last box, if you will, on being qualified for that piece of it.
Yeah, and that'll be an online test, similar if you've done the youth protection services. We're setting that up that same way, so it'll be automatically graded online. You can take it as often as you want and just submit the one that you answer all the right questions. It'll be open book. So we're not trying to be difficult. We just want to make sure the basic information that we've covered, that you're aware of it. So one other question on how many people in the club have to be qualified. The president-elect has to have attended a grant management seminar since February of 2011. So if you've attended any time previous to that, since 2011, you're fine. You have to have one other person in your club that's attended grant management training since 2011. So basically, past presidents should be in your club if they've taken the training, or a foundation chair or somebody in the past. So most clubs have somebody already that's in the club currently who's gone through grant management. So it doesn't have to be two people taking it this time. Hope that makes sense. If not, let me know and we'll clarify it more next time. Each year there's a question about if your MOU is current. The MOU has to be signed by the 2016-17 president and the 17-18 president. So you have to sign an MOU every year. That's part of the qualification process. So every year you have to submit new ones. And you submit it in PDF form to stewardship@rotary5160.org. That's in the policy and on the websites. And we'll go over it again more next week. And by the way, we only take things in PDF form. Both the grant application and MOUs need to be in PDF. So thanks again for attending, and we look forward to seeing you either in Red Bluff or Benicia. If you have any questions, go ahead and email them to me. Candy, any parting words?
Yeah, I just want to thank all of you because whether you know it or not, you're guinea pigs because this is the first time we've tried to do this through webinar, 2 sessions in webinar and then a small session at the assembly rather than making you do a 3+ hour straight grant management training. So we appreciate it, but we appreciate your input, and the more you can tell us of your experience on it and going forward, we look for your input because we want to improve, we want to make it better, and so anything that you have to add or let us know along the way, please do so, either emailing us or telling us at the assemblies or whatever, but we want to make it as user-friendly as possible, but also the best product as possible. So your feedback is highly appreciated, and thank you again.
Yes, and thank you again, and that's a very good recap, Candy, and hopefully we'll communicate with you and keep improving and keep going. But thank you very much. We're done a little bit early, and I appreciate your attention, and if there's nothing else, I'll sign off. Thank you very much.